Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. My name is Sudhir Sahasranaman and you're watching Study with Sudhir. In this video, we are going to discuss The Landlady, which is a sinister kind of a thriller story, pretty similar to The Cookie Lady, which is part of the English literature syllabus for Class 12 ISC. Very similar story. And this is part of the Perspectives textbook. And this is written by one of my favorite authors, Roald Dahl. Very prolific short story writer, and every story written by Dahl is quite different and unique in its own way. So let's get straight into the story. The main protagonist, actually there are only two characters. One is a landlady and the other one is Billy Weaver, who is the protagonist. Now, Billy Weaver had traveled. Actually, the story is named after the landlady, so in that sense she's as much of the protagonist, but she would be someone who we would call the antagonist, right? So Billy Weaver had traveled down from London on the slow afternoon train with a change at Swindon on the way. And by the time he got to Bath, it was about 9 o'clock in the evening and the moon was coming up out of a clear starry sky over the houses opposite the station entrance. Quite a long sentence. Now, Bath is about 1.5 hours approximately from London, but on a slow afternoon train, as this seems to indicate, it could take a little longer. Swindon is something which is midway, right, between London and Bath. Bath is known for the architecture of its buildings, the Roman architecture. There is a Roman Bath there. I have been to Bath in the year 2001, much before most of you were born, right? So Billy Weaver, this particular character, he's a young boy, 17 years old. He has come from London and he has reached Bath at around 9 o'clock in the late evening. And it is pretty cold. The air was deadly cold and the wind was like a flat blade of ice on his cheeks. So the wind, as it blew, it felt as if, there was ice being pasted on his face. So I made this illustration. He's arriving at the Bath railway station. You can see that it is obviously looking very chilly and cold. And that's where Billy Weaver arrives at 9 o'clock in the night. Excuse me, he said, but is there a fairly cheap hotel not too far away from here? So before I start, I would want to keep highlighting some of the key words that you need to keep remembering. The air was deadly cold. The wind was like a flat blade of ice. Now, all these are indications because the story is pretty sinister in its nature, as I told you. So these are all kind of, Roald Dahl is basically going to drop a whole lot of hints from a big bag of hints. He's going to keep dropping them on the way. And it's your job as a reader and a student to keep collecting it and understand that, oh, this is the author dropping a hint for us to catch. So the flat blade of ice and the fact that it was deadly cold gives you a very unsettling kind of a feeling. The atmosphere is almost threatening because it's extremely cold and it is kind of foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is a major literary device which has been used in this particular story. It is foreshadowing the danger that is going to befall Billy Weaver at the end of the story. And this is the first hint that has been dropped by Roald Dahl. And the entire story, as I said, is interspersed with these kind of negative things that keep happening or keep popping up. So please make a note of this as we go along. So he asks somebody whether there is any cheap hotel which is not too far away from the railway station. Try the Bell and Dragon. Now, Bell and Dragon. Dragon, again, something which is sinister. And you wonder, another thing, just kind of saying that, asking you to be attentive and pay attention to these kind of hints. The porter answered, pointing down the road. They might take you in. It's about a quarter of a mile along on the other side. So they may, have a room for you. So it's that much of a distance down this road. Billy thanked him and picked up his suitcase and set out to walk the quarter mile to the Bell and Dragon. That's some kind of a place where he could stay the night. He had never been to Bath before. He didn't know anyone who lived there. So he was completely a stranger in that town. But Mr. Greenslade at the head office in London had told him that it was a splendid town. So he had praised him, nice place, which it indeed is. Find your own lodgings. And they had said that you need to take care of your lodging where you will stay. He had said, and then go along and report to the branch manager as soon as you have got yourself settled. So as soon as you've settled down, you need to report to the branch manager of that office. Billy was 17 years old. Now, that's an important piece of information that is being provided because it comes up again in the second half of the story. He was wearing a new navy blue overcoat, okay, a new brown trilby hat, and a new brown suit, and he was feeling fine. Now, he was obviously wearing these new clothes because he had come to a new place and he wanted to make a positive impression. That's point number one. Point number two is that a trilby hat is a soft hat, felt hat, with a narrow brim and an indented top. Okay. It was considered pretty stylish in Britain in those days in the 1900s. And in the story, Billy Weaver is wearing a trilby hat, which shows that he's very neatly and very formally dressed, like a proper young man traveling alone. Okay, so he wants to obviously convey a good impression. He walked briskly down the street. He was trying to do everything briskly these days. Now, please note one thing. He walked briskly down the street. He was trying to do everything briskly these days. Briskness, he had decided, was the one common characteristic of all successful businessmen. The big shots up at the head office were absolutely fantastically brisk all the time. They were amazing. So what do you note? The use of the word brisk 4 times. What does it convey? That he has obviously understood that he needs to be brisk, just like the people at the head office in London, in order to make a good impression, because he thinks that's an amazing quality to have. It also shows his inexperience and his desire to conform to the idea of success. That he said that was a common characteristic of all successful businessmen. So he wants to emulate them and do what they were doing back in the head office, at the head office in London. So it shows that he observes people, and that power of observation has had an impact on him. So thereby you realize that he's a man who is of an impressionable age at the age of 17, and these kind of things make an impact on him. So in that sense, he comes across as an innocent young man who is not a cunning sort. He sees somebody and he feels impressed. So that's something. I'm reminded of our friend's son, who's now an Indian Revenue Service officer. When he was young, at the age of, and this I'm talking of almost 15 years back, he would be now 27 years old, 27, 28. So 15 years old, when he was about 13 years old. Any movie you take him, he will say, this is the best movie I have seen. Any restaurant you take him and, lunch, dinner, whatever, he'll say, this is the best meal I've had. I always think that he has such a positive attitude about life, So Billy Weaver reminds me of him, in the sense that, he kind of wants to make a good impression, there's nothing wrong with it, but it also makes him a little vulnerable to manipulation, which is what we realize happens in the second half of the story. There were no shops on this wide street that he was walking along, only a line of tall houses on each side. All of them were identical. Now, that's again a little strange. There is too much of conformity, right? They had porches. Porches is a place which is like, a front area in the house where there would be some kind of a sitting kind of a space. It's a small open or enclosed space in front of the main door. It has a roof on top, and there would be steps and railings also, and that's a place where you could also put some chairs. Okay. Now, the other thing it also shows is ambition. I have already mentioned that to you. So he says that, the fact that, successful businessmen, they had porches and pillars and about 4 or 5 steps leading up to going up to their front doors. And it was obvious that once upon a time, they had been rather swanky. Swanky means very stylish and very good looking residences. But now, even in the darkness, he could see that the paint was peeling from the woodwork. Another hint. peeling paint from the woodwork. It shows that, there is a sense of degradation, right, on the woodwork and the windows, and the handsome white facade. Facade is the front portion, but cracked and blotchy from neglect. So this decaying, the decay in the look of the buildings is another hint which Roald Dahl has dropped out there, that these are all houses which have passed their prime. They are no longer as good as they would have been when they were freshly built. Okay. Yeah, blotchy means, some kind of spots. Suddenly, in a downstairs window that was brilliantly illuminated by a street lamp not 6 yards away, Billy caught sight of a printed notice propped up against the glass in one of the upper panes. It said bed and breakfast in capital letters. There was a vase of yellow chrysanthemums, tall and beautiful, standing just underneath the notice. So while he was going around for the looking for the dragon place where he would have stayed on there, but he noticed this place called bed and breakfast, and this is an illustration that gives you an idea about how it was there. There was this green curtain, velvety in nature, and there were this yellow chrysanthemums below this particular notice which said bed and breakfast. Now, bed and breakfast is essentially a small place where guests can rent a room and they are served breakfast in the morning. It's not a full hotel, it's not a proper hotel. Most of the times it is a house which kind of lets out a room, and it also serves breakfast. In Europe, in many cities, in many countries of Europe, you find these kind of bed and breakfast accommodation which give you the sense of living in a home. It's a very homely atmosphere. I remember we stayed at a bed and breakfast place in Austria, Salzburg, in Salzburg. So, those are the kind of places that you have. Europe is full of those kind of places. The trend is catching up in India also. Many houses in Kerala let out these kind of places for bed and breakfast accommodation. He stopped walking. He moved a bit closer. Green curtains, some sort of velvety material, were hanging down on either side of the window, as the illustration showed. The chrysanthemums looked wonderful beside them. So it shows, a positive attitude, of appreciation. He went right up and peered through the glass, tried to look inside into the room, and the first thing he saw was a bright fire burning in the hearth. So there was this fire that had been lit inside. So he thought, he was kind of noticing everything. On the carpet in front of the fire, a pretty little dachshund, that's how it is pronounced. It's a small dog, long dog with short legs, long body, was curled up asleep with its nose tucked into its belly. The room itself, as far as he could see in the half darkness, because only the fire was illuminating it, was filled with pleasant furniture, right? So it looked like a good looking living room or a drawing room. There was a baby grand piano. A baby grand piano is a smaller version of a piano, and a big sofa and several plump armchairs. And in one corner, he spotted a large parrot in a cage. So he has observed all these things. So that's another aspect of Billy Weaver that you notice, that he's a pretty observant kind of a person. He notices every detail. Animals were usually a good sign in a place like this, Billy told himself. So Billy believes that animals are good, which means an animal lover, a parrot and a dog, that it also shows his tendency to interpret things in a favorable way. He looks at the glass half full. He likes to see things in a positive light. And it looked to him as though it would be a pretty decent house to stay in, right? Certainly, it would be more comfortable than the Bell and Dragon. So instead of the Bell and Dragon, he thinks that the bed and breakfast accommodation would be a better place because of what he sees inside that particular room. On the other hand, a pub would be more congenial than a boarding house. But then he wants to argue that if that's a pub, That may be a probably congenial, means a more pleasant, a more happy, a more friendly kind of a place. There would be beer and darts in the evening. Darts is something which you kind of throw on the board, and lots of people to talk to. And it would probably be a good bit cheaper too. So he thinks that that would be cheaper. He would have company, and he would have beer, and he would be able to play darts. So in that sense, a more, happy kind of an environment. He had stayed a couple of nights in a pub months before, and he had liked it. He had never stayed in any boarding houses like this bed and breakfast accommodation. And to be perfectly honest, he was a tiny bit frightened of them. He was not exactly comfortable with the thought. The name itself conjured means it kind of, it kind of led to images of watery cabbage, rapacious landladies, and a powerful smell of kippers in the living room. So two things I wanted to tell you. What he sees through the window is an ideal kind of a living room, right? What it tells you is that appearances are extremely deceptive, right? Appearances, the outside facade conveyed something of all the buildings. The inside facade, he feels positively inclined when he sees inside. Now, this appearance, the outside appearance was the real thing. The inside appearance is a deceptive appearance, right? The animals are presented as a positive sign, but we will know about it later in a rather chilling detail. And the coziness that he observes is something, it's almost to tempt him inside. It's like a trap. It's like to lure you inside. So Billy initially favors a pub like the Bell and Dragon, but because he's kind of a little apprehensive about all these things that are mentioned in the last line. Rapacious means, the word means greedy or something which is grasping. Uh, it is generally used, not in this particular story. When you discuss landlords in general, you use a word like rapacious to say that they are very greedy kind of people. Here he has used it for landlady. And what happens immediately after presents a stark contrast. Okay, because she does not come across as being a greedy kind of a person per se. Okay, keepers are smoked fish. This one is greedy. These are smoked fish. Keepers, they are generally, you smoke fish, then you add salt to it, split it, add salt to it, and they're a traditional British breakfast, either grilled or fried. Okay, I am not a fish eater, so I don't know much about it. This is the dictionary meaning I've picked up. Okay, now this essentially, till now, what you realize is that it highlights the theme of appearance and deception and reality, that Billy's own fears, which actually, what he says, rapacious landladies and all these slightly negative kind of connotations, is what he's apprehending, right? But he's taken in by what he sees and what will follow immediately after this. After dithering about like this in the cold for 2 or 3 minutes, Billy decided that he would walk on and take a look at the Bell and Dragon. Okay, because he's having this apprehension that this is what the boarding house accommodation would entail: the watery cabbage, the rapacious landladies, and the smell of kippers. Billy decided that he will go to the Bell and Dragon before making up his mind. If he doesn't like this, maybe he could come back here. He turned to go, and now a cure thing happened to him. Big hint. Okay, cure is something strange, unexplainable. He was in the act of stepping back and turning away from the window when all at once his eye was caught and held in the most peculiar manner by the small notice that was there. It's not as though he had not noticed that notice before, but this time it almost seemed to attract him like a magnet and say that, see me, see me, see me. And it screamed in capital letters, bed and breakfast, bed and breakfast, bed and breakfast, bed and breakfast. It almost seemed to be an overwhelming kind of a notice at this point in time. Something pure, that is something which cannot be explained. Each word was like a large black eye staring at him through the glass, holding him, compelling him, means come inside, forcing him to stay where he was and not to walk away from that house. And the next thing he knew, he was actually moving across from the window to the front door of the house, climbing up the steps that led to it and reaching for the bell. He does not have control over his feet and his hands. It It's as if it has happened automatically. After he read that, it pulled him towards him and made him do this instead of walking towards the bell and dragon. Now, this is a major hint, and makes you as a reader, okay, I'm getting goosebumps. Makes you as a reader, God, something is going to happen. He pressed the bell. Okay, he pressed and this is a major turning point. It again highlights the sinister nature of what is going to follow later on in this particular story. Now, the narration also, you realize the use of capital letters, it kind of emphasizes that Billy Weaver is losing his sense of control over his feet and his hands and his body, right? There is an irresistible pull towards the bed and breakfast boarding house, right? Irresistible pull. He's not able to control and say that, no, I will go to the bell and dragon. So his body and mind have been pulled in a manner which cannot really be explained, which is why the use of the word cure. Now, he pressed the bell. Far away in a back room, he heard it ringing. Inside, he heard it ringing. It conveys some kind of a hollow sound. Again, something sinister. And then at once, it must have been at once, because he hadn't even time to take the finger. You ring the bell and you take the finger, and it takes a while for the person to come out. But it seemed as though the lady was standing right there at the door. He did not even have the time to take his finger from the bell before the door had opened. Isn't it very strange? Does that ever happen? I mean, do you ever open the door the moment someone rings the bell, right? Unless you are also standing there, right? Here, the landlady seems to be doing precisely that. And a woman was standing. Normally, you hear the bell, ring the bell, and now, the narrator is reasoning it out. Normally, you ring the bell and you have at least half a minute's wait before the door opens. But this dame, that is this lady, was like a jack in the box. Jack in the box is a children's toy that surprises the user. You open it or you press a button, tap, karke, it comes up. That's the kind of reaction he had, because he pressed the bell and it opened. He had not even removed his finger from the calling bell. He pressed the bell and out she popped, popped. So it kind of conveys something very mechanical, inanimate. A living being will not be so quick, right? So that's again some kind of a small hint. It made him jump. He got scared. She was about 45 or 50 years old, and the moment she saw him, she gave him a warm, welcoming smile. Now, this is the theme of deception, that she puts on this warm, welcoming smile, because at this point in time, Billy Weaver is scared. He has just jumped in fright. The moment the door has swung open, the moment he has rung the bell, right? So she's kind of greeting him with a very warm, welcoming smile. So the appearance is a little unsettling. Things don't add up. Someone who opens the door immediately and then welcomes him with a smile, it doesn't quite add up, right? Now, this is how it does, So you can see the expression on Billy Weaver's face. He's flabbergasted. He's completely taken by surprise. And the lady does look a little evil. Now, let's move in. Please come in, she said pleasantly. She stepped aside, holding the door wide open for him to enter, and Billy found himself automatically starting forward. Automatically. He is not in control of his feet. He's moving forward. The feet have a mind of their own. They are not minding their own business. They are not kind of waiting for orders from the mind, from the brain. They are doing their own thing. The compulsion, or more accurately, the desire to follow after her into that house was extraordinarily strong. So it was something like he was being pulled into the house. The desire to follow was extraordinarily strong. This is another important thing. All the words that I'm highlighting, please mark them and use them in your answers. That's the best way, because the theme of deception, the sinister theme, will definitely be a question that will be asked in your exams. No doubts about it. I saw the notice in the window, he said, holding himself back. So now he seems to have come a little bit into his own. in control. Yes, I know. I was wondering about a room. It's all ready for you, my dear. My dear, she's trying to be very warm, very welcoming. She had a round pink face and very gentle blue eyes. Please note all this personality look wise detail. Okay, it's all ready for you, my dear. What does this line indicate? It kind of suggests that she was expecting him, or at least someone like Billy Weaver. I mean, not exactly Billy Weaver. And her gentle appearance is a deliberate contrast to the evil that she actually personifies, which will unfold in the second half of the story. I was on my way to the Bell and Dragon. So he's being very honest. Billy told her, but the notice in your window just happened to catch my eye. So he's saying that I stopped because I happened to see the notice and it kind of caught my attention. My dear boy. So notice the emphasis and the repetition of the word dear. She's trying to be extra affectionate, extra gentle. Why don't you come in out of the cold? How much do you charge? 5 and 6 pence a night, including breakfast. Now, 5 and 6 pence a night, including breakfast, which is fantastically cheap. It was fantastically cheap. It was less than half of what he had been willing to pay. So this was much cheaper compared to what he may have shelled out at the Bell and Dragon. 5 and 6 pence. This 5 and 6 pence. This is as per the old British currency, which was being used before 1971. 1 pound is 20 shillings. Just for you, in case if you would like to know, 1 pound equals 20 shillings. Okay, and 1 shilling equals 12 pence. Okay, so so this is basically talking about 5 and 6 pence a night. Okay, this was the old currency system, not really in vogue right now. Now it's basically the pound and pence. So 5 and 6 pence. So this will be 12 pence, 12 into 5. So this will be 60 plus 6. So this will be 66 pence in innocence. Okay. If that is too much, she added, then perhaps I can reduce it a tiny bit. So she thinks that, oh, maybe it's a bit too much. Do you desire an egg for breakfast? Eggs are expensive at the moment. It would be 6 pence less without the egg, right? 5 and 6 pence is fine, he answered. I should like very much to stay here. So he finds it reasonable and he can stay there. I knew you would. Do come in. So she's obviously keeps it low price so that she can entice guests like this. She seemed terribly nice. She looked exactly like the mother of one's best school friend, welcoming one into the house to stay for the Christmas holiday. So he's having a very positive impression about the lady. Billy took off his hat and stepped over the threshold. Threshold is the place which you cross in order to get into the house. Just hang it there, okay? And let me help you with your coat. So she says that, you hang the coat hat there and let me help you take off your coat. There were no other hats or coats in the hall. There were no umbrellas, no walking sticks, nothing. So she says, I mean, he observes that there are no other hats, which means there are probably no other guests who were staying at the boarding house at that point in time. We have it all to ourselves, she said, smiling at him over her shoulder as she led the way upstairs. That is, we have it all to ourselves means there is no one else staying here right now at the moment. Okay. And this absence of umbrellas, hats, etc., is again another red flag, which Billy observes the absence, but obviously it does not, his antenna don't go up at that point in time. But we as the reader should be able to spot all these red flags. You see, it isn't very often that I have the pleasure of taking a visitor into my little nest. Now, my little nest again is a little, I mean, we do refer to homes as nests, obviously, but nest in this case almost conveys an impression of, trapping somebody for prey. I mean, she's a predator inside that nest. So that's the impression it seems to convey. The old girl is slightly dotty. Dotty is an informal word for, slightly crazy or slightly eccentric. It's an informal kind of a British word. Billy told himself, but at 5 and 6 pence a night, who cares about that? How do I care if the landlady is a little eccentric, a little crazy? I should have thought you would be simply swamped with applicants. So he just tries to be polite and says, oh, I thought you would have many people wanting to stay here. Oh, I am, my dear. I am. Of course, I am. But the trouble is that I'm inclined to be just a teeny weeny bit means a little choosy and particular. I don't, you know, take any guess. I'm a little choosy about who I allow to be a guest in my little nest. This is how you need to write your answers. You use the words which are used in the text and you weave it into the thing. Not like, they should not be stuck there. They should flow into the sentences. If you see what I mean. Yes. Uh, but I'm always ready. Everything is always ready day and night in this house, just on the off chance that an acceptable young gentleman will come along. And it's such a pleasure, my dear, such a very great pleasure that now and again I open the door and see someone standing there who is just exactly right. So she says that everything is always kept ready. Ready for what? That's the question you need to ask right now. Ready for what? And she says that, someone comes. So she's kind of laying it thick. She's praising him, calling him an acceptable young gentleman. Another key phrase that you can use if you're doing a profile of Billy Weaver, right? She was halfway up the stairs and she paused with one hand on the stair rail, turning her head and smiling down at him with pale lips. Like you. So, like you. Just imagine if long sentence and then there is a long pause and then you say, like you. There is something very sinister about it. There is something very daravna about it. As though some kind of a very deliberate messaging is being conveyed by saying, like you, right? And what happens after this is more important. Like you, she added, and her blue eyes traveled slowly all the way down the length of Billy's body to his feet and then up again. So she's kind of sizing him up. Don't you think this is a very scary kind of feeling if someone looks at you up and down like this, right? It's not it won't make you feel very comfortable, right? Uh, it's very predatory in nature. And it's almost like, she's kind of assessing him. Does he fit the bill for my next victim? Can he be my next victim? That's probably what she's sizing without saying anything, like you. And then she goes up and down. Think about it. What it also conveys is that the landlady probably chooses her victims based on certain characteristics. Okay, how they look, their height, maybe, and perhaps Billy Weaver fits the bill, which is why she opened the door also immediately. Acceptable young man. That's the phrase she used, right? Acceptable young gentleman, right? On the second floor landing, so this part is extremely important. Okay. On the second floor landing, she said to him, this floor is mine. They climbed up another flight of stairs to the next floor. And this one is all yours, she said. Here is your room. I do hope you will like it. She took him into a small but charming front bedroom, switching on the light as she went in. Okay, this is something which doesn't need to be explained. It's pretty clear. The morning sun comes right in the window, Mr. Perkins. It's Mr. Perkins, isn't it? Now, she misses his name. Instead of Weaver, she calls him Perkins. No, he said, it's Weaver. Now, is it something which we can ignore? No. The slip of the tongue and calling him as Mr. Perkins instead of Mr. Weaver is again a significant clue because it shows that she has had other guests before and perhaps struggles to remember that, because 45-50 is not really an old age, right? So it's not an age, where you will start losing your memory. So obviously she has had many people and she struggles to remember their names. Okay. Because otherwise she's very perfect. The room is perfect. Everything around the house seems very perfect. To make a mistake like this seems a little out of place, right? Mr. Weaver, how nice. I have put a water bottle between the sheets to air them out. Mr. Weaver, it's such a comfort to have a hot water bottle in a strange bed with clean sheets. Don't you agree? So she says that, I have put a water bottle out there. So, basically to say that, I take very good care of all my guests, and she kind of wants praise in return, saying that, a hot water bottle in a bed with clean sheets is something which is, obviously desirable. And you may light the gas fire at any time if you feel chilly. If you feel cold, you can always light the gas fire. Thank you, Billy said. Thank you ever so much. He noticed that the bedspread had been taken off the bed and that the bedclothes had been neatly turned back on one side, all ready for someone to get in. Now, that's something strange. If there was no guest before, why would it be that everything is like ready for Billy to come in? So that's again something, you feel a little uncomfortable with all this. How did she know that someone would come that night at 9 o'clock? Ring the bell at 9 o'clock in the night. So, and to be all this to be ready, it seems something strange. So it's almost like, she was expecting someone and anxious about the arrival of the guest. So she had kept everything just about ready, all ready for someone to get in. Now, this line is again something which does not make you feel very comfortable. I'm so glad you appeared, she said, looking earnestly into his face. I was beginning to get worried. So she's observing him very closely. I was beginning to get worried. Why would she worry? That's a question you need to ask. Why would she worry? How would she know that he would ring the bell? So she says that I'm glad you appeared, and I was beginning to get appeared. So it implies that she was expecting someone and she was getting anxious about the arrival of the next guest. That's all right, Billy answered brightly. You must not worry about me. He put his suitcase on the chair and started to open it. And what about supper, my dear? Did you manage to get anything to eat before you came here? I'm not a bit hungry, thank you, he said. I think I'll just go to bed as soon as possible because tomorrow I have to get up rather early and report to the office. So he is looking forward to the next day. Very well then. I will leave you now so that you can unpack. And before you go to bed, would you be kind enough to pop into the sitting room on the ground floor, which he had seen through the window, and sign the book? We call it the sitting room. Everyone has to do that because it's the law of the land. So she's now conveying the impression that she follows the law of the land. What happens later is something going to be terribly, terribly unlawful, right? So that's something. So she's a criminal, but here she says that I follow the law of the land. And we don't want to be breaking any laws at this stage in the proceedings. So she's saying, now this can be interpreted two ways. One is the literal meaning. The other meaning is that she does not want to be caught breaking the law. She doesn't want anyone to find out that she did something bad, killed someone, right? Which is what she will do at the end. So she doesn't want to be caught breaking any law. So this can be interpreted in two ways. A very interesting sentence, right? So please do make a note of this. She gave him a little wave of the hand and went quickly out of the room and closed the door. So the law of the land excuse is a very thin veil to her actual purpose. She wants to record the names of her victims. Maybe, it serves her morbid nature or some kind of record keeping. And her quick exit suggests that she wants him alone with the book, that she wants him to go down to the sitting room and write down his name and details in that particular book. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause here. This will be video number 1. In the second video, we will complete the story and, go to the more interesting and the sinister part of the story. I hope you enjoyed it so far. I'll now meet you in the second video. Tata, bye-bye, namaskar.